Hey everyone, and welcome to the Witcher Hunter video. So, this is the first video we made from the live streams. Here in the beginning you see me doodling a little bit as we wait for the stream to get set up. I didn't really have any ideas at the time, which is a terrible place to start from, so you'll see me sort of safety zone doodling. And about here we get started. I think just about here we got started actually. And yeah, just trying to get into the mood of things. So I think some of the first things someone suggested was like an orc character. So I started with that. What was really fun about this character was to kind of come up with it on the go, kind of powered by a bunch of little suggestions by the audience. So I kind of just got into it. I got this idea pretty quickly that he wouldn't be a witch hunter, he would be a witcher hunter. And I like the idea of this world of the Witcher sort of having an actual manifestation of this this denigration that they always talk about, how the Witchers are all, you know, subdued and how they're being hunted and stuff like that. You know, I'm sure they're not actually hunted by orcs or anything. As far as I know, they're not really a fixture of that universe, but I thought it would be fun, so that's what we went for. Got a lot of fun sort of questions during the working of this, and since it was sort of the first stream, I wanted to go with a technique that I'm kind of familiar with, but I did learn a bunch from this, which is interesting because I've done this technique, you know, pretty going for, you know, maybe 5 years, more or less the same sort of approach for a lot of the stuff that I do, and it's interesting because I'm much more of a drawer than I am a painter, and so I'll get kind of into my drawings and I'll try to solve a lot of problems in my drawings, and sometimes I then, you know, solve too much. I go too far in sort of thinking, and then as I sort of prepare for the next stages and go into the outlining process, I'll end up overcommitting to stuff that I've drawn. You'll probably see me doing that, and then regretting it later in the in the painting, and then I have to go back and sort of clean things up. And I won't notice until pretty late in the process. So it's a good example of how you can kind of grow a little blind on what you're working on. But it's not all bad. It's a good little learning curve. So the fun thing about doing this in front of an audience was the sort of random associations you get when being asked questions and you answer them. So a bunch of the little sudden changes you'll see me go back and make are due to things that sort of spring into my mind as people ask me totally unrelated questions. But for example, those ears, that came to me like in the middle of like the answer of a totally unrelated question, and I just zoned out and started drawing them, and that little bird skulls and stuff like that. It kind of comes by itself. Same with the hair. I didn't really know what to do with the hair. Usually I tried to, I think of orcs as like having pretty limp, pretty sort of shitty hair, so I don't really want to give them much to go on, but I like the idea of like frizzled sort of straw-like hair. Here you have one of those other things too where you forget totally that these are things that you can tend to later, so I'll start like trying to get like a nice little read on the fur, for example, or on the hair. And you can look at the hair right now and see what I mean for later. That I actually went and like did the individual hair sticking out thing, which is not gonna work at all, and I'll have to go back and fix that later. As I was working with the flat colors, I was trying to keep it very sort of closed. It was very much working around that core yellow color, so most of the colors were in fact just different saturations and different brightnesses of yellow, with a little bit of variation towards red and a little bit of variation towards green, but very little. And I quite like that. Like, this was another element where I was trying to explain an idea about how to think about spatial drawing. But it's an interesting way of working with color. It's very nice to keep your palette pretty simple, pretty collected. And it's a nice way of adding a little bit of credibility and a little bit of believability to otherwise kind of unbelievable pieces of source material. So I tried to do this quite a lot actually, like trying to keep within fairly tight gamoots, as you might call them. And here we start with the lighting. I went kind of different than what I often do, in as much as I'll often go and draw in the shadows, but in this case it was kind of the opposite. I would draw in the light. I like the idea of this sort of spooky back-ish lighting. That sort of carves out his face and the shoulder. And also, like a note on the weapon, I just wanted the most vicious sort of decapitating, axey, glavey, scythy thing. Just a cruel piece of steel nailed to a stick, essentially. I could think of no finer weapon for the hunting and disposal of monster hunters. You should always, if you're hunting monster hunters, you should have a monstrous weapon, I think. So I think that was an appropriate choice. Here I'm going in with a second sort of round of shading. I'm using a darken layer because I don't want to allow myself to sort of slip into working with lighter values. I just want to push the values down at this point. So I'm working with a darken layer and just working on pushing everything that I want to sort of recede in the shape. I'm trying to push that in, and then later on, once I'm done, just fishing around on all these like little details, I'll start working up the lighter values as well, just to try and pull out more outstanding elements of the shape. And this is a pretty effective way of working. You can get a lot done by essentially just, once you have everything established with your line drawing and you have a good understanding of the spatial workings of the drawing, then you can start pushing and pulling the shape to try and get it to come out towards you. You should always do this with a bit of an eye towards limiting yourself and towards sort of making sure that you're serving the purpose you set out to complete or to work towards. It's very easy to sort of slip for the slip into using too extreme values, or sort of letting the seductive nature of Photoshop or digital media or Procreate get away from you, and you can sort of end up with crazy values and crazy colors that aren't necessarily what you wanted, but it sure is fun to make. So try and work within a guideline you set for yourself, I think. So you can see I'm working on my tertiary light here. My idea was to have sort of this sort of warm environment lit by, or at least the hint of a warm environment lit by a cold light. So the bounce light would by nature be quite warm and gives them a nice sort of creepy, evil-y sort of red-orange underlight, which is always fun to play with. So I thought it was a nice way of both giving an idea of sort of this let's call it a toasty environment, and also giving a bit more color variation, something to sort of spruce up, give some life to a lot of these earthy colors. So I thought that worked pretty well. At this point I've gone into more or less my stage of final render, so I've started collapsing layers down, and you'll see me going over first with a scatter brush and start like just softening up a bunch of the shapes that I don't want you to pay attention to, the shapes that aren't interesting to me and therefore shouldn't be interesting to you. And I go in with a linear dodge or add layer with a dark blue, not overly saturated color, to start just pulling out a little bit of highlights on the face. I might have gone too heavy. I think I might pull it back a little bit, but essentially just I really want the eye to sort of migrate up towards the face. That's where most of the life in this character is. I think that's where it sort of works best. So that's where I kind of put most of my attention. At this point I realized I hadn't given the guy any scars, so I had to do that real quick, and then I wanted to give the unnamed Witcher a little bit of touch up, and then also the weapon needed a little bit of love. And that's about it. Smack on a darker background, little finishing touches, we're done. So yeah, that's The Witcher Hunter. I really hope you liked it. Thanks to everybody who showed up to the stream, and thanks very much to anybody who's supporting the Patreon and who's helping out that way. Thank you so much. You let me do all this stuff. I'm very grateful. So yeah, thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.